Women's History Month is already here, and as someone whose 90% reading list is filled with books written by women, I feel like this is my time to shine. So, today I have curated this massive list of books that I want to recommend, and it spans through genres and different categories and different narrative styles and even different timelines. So I believe that there will be a book for everyone in this video, and I am so elated and so happy to discuss this with all of you. So in every section or in every genre, there are some books that I have already read, and there are also some books that are in my TBR. I know their context and I just know it for sure that I am gonna love them. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the video. So the first section or the first genre or the first category is contemporary fiction, because it is one of my most favorite genres of all time, and I have some of the greatest recommendations. So starting off really strong with Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. I have repeatedly talked about this book on my Instagram page. So if you don't know already, Lessons in Chemistry is about this brilliant woman, Elizabeth Zott, who is a chemist, and it is her struggle of just existing as a phenomenal woman in an ordinary world, and it has pulled the right strings in my heart, and I absolutely love this. This is a 5-star read. If you haven't, you have to read this. The next book is a book that pulled me out of a year-long reading slump. The book I'm talking about is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This talks about stardom, the beauty, the glory, the good, bad, and ugly of it. And oh my god, the way Evelyn Hugo is this extraordinary woman who comes from nothing and becomes a legend is a story that will live in my heart and mind forever and ever. If you haven't read this book yet, I don't know what you're doing, because this is everywhere and it is so worth the hype. The next book that I want to talk about is a book that you have probably seen everywhere, and even think that this doesn't necessarily fit into the category that is right for Women History Month. But trust me, Ali Hazelwood is a person who writes about women in STEM, and in this, she has written about a phenomenal young chess player who is in a male dominated world. Obviously chess is a very male dominated sport, and this is her story. Even though it is a YA romance, I feel like Ali Hazelwood did a brilliant job of describing the cracks in a male dominated sport and how it is time for us to drop the stereotypes, and how exceptionally brilliant women, brilliant sports person suffer because of the blatant patriarchy that exists in such sports. And I think that for someone who have not intentionally thought of reading feminist literature, I think that this book will be a good start to start the conversation and then build up the interest to, slowly turn towards the books that are really important in this context. So yeah, I would love to recommend this one. The next two books that I will be recommending, these are the books that are in my TBR. I have not read them, but I have very high hopes from them. The first book is As Long as the Lemon Tree Grows. This is a story of self-discovery. This is a story of war and how it destroys life. Violence everywhere is a target on women, and women suffer the most blatant part of it. I believe that this is going to be sad and this is going to be heartbreaking, and this will keep me thinking and wondering for days. So I am really looking forward to reading this. This book took over the bookstagram community like a storm. This is Yellow Face by Rebecca F. Huang, and it is one of those books that I have been waiting desperately to read. This is about identity. This is about finding one's own agency, and it has a setting of the publication industry. I feel like this is going to be something that I will definitely enjoy, and I think I will read this month. So I am really excited and looking forward for this. Now we are shifting gears and we are going to a different category. We are going to a different genre. This is a fantasy. And I personally believe that nothing hits as much a fantasy book does, because it is so nuanced, and there is multitude of perspective, and there are so many discourses, and it is set up in a world that is supposed to be a world of dreams and imagination, but it somehow hits the reality so well, and it just resonates with us. So I feel like I also have the highest number of books here, so I feel like this is a genre that I want to talk about, and I am really excited to share with you the books that I have put down and finalized for this. So let's go. The first book is by RF Wong, the same author I talked last about. Her books are phenomenal. Her books are considered the stepping stone of, or an introduction to, the feminist literature of today's era. So the Poppy War by this phenomenal woman is a feminist fantasy. It is about fighting the patriarchal norms that exist in this warrior community or this warrior setup. I don't have a lot of idea of what goes inside this book, but people have said that this is one of the best fantasy novels they have read, and they have claimed it to be a feminist fantasy. So I am really looking forward to reading this one. The next book that I want to talk about, I think that everyone is aware of this book at this point. This is Circe by Madeline Miller. And oh my god, this Greek retelling had book talk community on a chokehold, because this is a feminist retelling of the Greek mythology, and Circe is obviously a central character, and someone rightly said that I support women's rights, but I vehemently support women's wrongs. This book, my dear friend, this is the book that you need to read if you have the similar feeling. Yeah, that's Circe for you all. The next book is one of the best books that I read last year, and I have talked about it in my last video as well. This is An Amber in the Ashes. This is a dystopian fantasy setting, and the female character here, oh my god, each and every female character, the good ones, the bad ones, and even the questionable ones, they are the epitome of fight. You know, they have the fight in them, and I don't think that I can do any justice by describing it in words, that how phenomenal these characters are. They have their flaws, but the way they are fighting for their place in this insanely hypocritic and patriarchal world, oh my god, this book felt just right. Yeah, that's An Amber in the Ashes for you all. The next book that I want to talk about, people know, people who know me know that the book that I think of when people ask me which is my most favorite book of all times, this is The Invisible Life of Eddie LaRue. And oh my god, V. Schwab is a magician, because what she has done in this book is she has fleshed out these brilliant characters. Like, they are deeply flawed, specifically Eddie, but oh my god, the way I love her, I would set my soul on fire for her. So Eddie, in this desperation of finding some freedom and some liberty in her life, ends up selling her soul to the devil without even realizing the actual consequences of it. And the result is that she becomes invisible, like not literally invisible, but people forget her. As soon as she is out of their sight, people completely forget about her existence, and she goes on to live an immortal life. But what length a woman has to put herself through to get the basic necessities, the basic rights that every creature which ever had a life should be capable of having. So, yeah, The Invisible Life of Eddie LaRue. Next book that I am going to show you guys, it is one of those books that have kept me haunting for more than a year at this point. The Priory of the Orange Tree. This is a massive book. This is a feminist fantasy masterpiece, and it breaks my heart that I still haven't shown the guts of picking this up. I actually have no idea what goes inside this, but everyone who has read this have only spoken highly of this. So I think that the way I have the guts to blindly dive into it, just knowing the fact that this is a feminist fantasy, I think that you should too. And just pick it up without any context and start reading this. Let me see. 830 pages book, just because it is a feminist fantasy. That's all. Let's move forward to our next category, the next genre, that is the classics. I have a list of few books, and I feel like these are the books that need to be talked about because this is where it started, you know. This is when women authors put out their work and just made it a point that their voice is being heard, and that in itself is a phenomenal thing, an act of bravery. Firstly in the list is obviously Little Women. This is a book that needs no introduction. This is a story of women wanting to be themselves. That's all I want to say about this. This is a story of sisters who are very different from one another, and they would do anything and everything for each other's happiness. That's all that I want to say about this book. If you haven't read this already, I think you should. It is a phenomenal piece of work. You have to read this. The next book is a book that just changed me as a human being, you know. The Handmaid's Tale. When I read this dystopian literature, the fact that this dystopia felt so much close to reality in itself was heartbreaking, and made me realize the importance of constantly talking about this idea of women empowerment, their liberty, their rights, and make sure that their voices are being heard. And this is a book that you have to read, and I know it for sure that it will change you too. Next book is not a new book at all. We all have seen it, we all know it, and it is classic for a reason. It is the story of two sisters who have been separated by fate, and it is the story of not completely being able to find each other but finding themselves in that process. And this is one of those stories that just need to be heard everywhere. And the fact that this is also one of those books that is banned in so many countries makes it even more essential read. I personally didn't enjoy the way it is written, but I can tell that why this book is important and why everyone should read this. So yeah, this is your cue. If you haven't read this, please do. The next two books are the books that I have not read, but I desperately want to, and probably I read at least one of them this month. The first one is To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf is the icon of feminist literature. Her stream of consciousness is one of my most favorite perspective of looking at things, and I feel like I have to read her work. And if you haven't, then let's read it together. And I think that this month is the perfect month to grab it and just read it and talk about it. So, and the last book in this category would be The Yellow Wallpaper. This is a very short read, and if you feel like you have been really scared of picking up classics, and I feel like this is the perfect read because it is really short and it is psychological, and it speaks so much in the limited number of pages that it is about a woman going mad and her opinion not being taken seriously. And it is a brilliant book. I don't know how to describe it. I just don't. I just want to say that it is a book that will stay in your head, make you feel the want of the agency that women are constantly fighting for. So yeah, that's The Yellow Wallpaper. The next genre, like not necessarily genre, but actually the next category is that of Asian literature. Of my most favorite reads are from this genre and like from this category, and that is the reason that I wanted it to be in a separate group, in a separate category. So yeah, let me just talk about it. The first book that I want to talk about is Kim Jeong, born 1982. This book is about a woman who have been wronged by the society, and it is not just a story of one woman. It is about every woman who is being wronged in the society, and how just the mere existence of a woman is a reason enough for her to slowly lose her mind. That's all I want to say about it. If you want a bit of detailed discussion about this, I have talked about it a lot in my last video. I would sincerely ask you to check it out. I will put it somewhere in the eye or something. So yeah, that's Kim Jeong, born 1982. The next book is my current read. This is Han Kang's The Vegetarian, and oh my god, the number of questions it raises is absolutely necessary. Each and every page is capable of giving you food for thought, and I believe Han Kang won the Nobel Prize for Literature for a reason, and this is a book that you should read. The next book that I want to talk about is Breast and Eggs by Miyoko Kawakami. I read her book Heaven, and since then I just know that everything this woman writes will be a phenomenal piece of work. I have heard that it is a brilliant piece of literature, and I have no doubts about it because I absolutely loved Heaven. And Breast and Eggs is the story of a woman finding her own agency and having rights over her own self. And I think I need to read that book, and you should too. The next set of books is Indian literature, and I had to include it. Let me just quickly share the books that I have picked from this. The first is a series. This is the Sati series by Koral Das Gupta. This is Ahalya. The next book is Kunti. Then there is Draupadi, and there is Tara and Mandodari. So these are the women that has been worshipped as Sati in our Indian mythology, and their story has been told from a very male perspective, and this little series is a feminist retelling of that. I have read the first three books, and I like them, and I feel like even if you don't essentially agree with these narratives, I feel like it is really essential to read about them and know how it might have been from their point of view. So this is my recommendation. The next book is this is I Kick and I Fly. This is about a girl from this underprivileged family who comes to know that her friend, her sister, is being sold off into the human trafficking racket, and she know that the only way she can survive is if she can defend herself. And this is a story of self-discovery and fighting for her own self, her own survival, and it is brilliantly written, and I feel like everyone needs to read this. The next book that I want to talk about is a book that is in my TBR and I wish to read it this month. This is The Wife and the Dancing Girl. This is about the roles that women play in this society, and how definitive these roles have been made for them, and they will fight for their agency, they will fight for their rights. And I think that this is a book that I will absolutely enjoy. So yeah, really looking forward to reading this. And next in the list are these two books, The Ministry of Utmost Happiness and God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. Arundhati Roy is a person who have striked up conversations that are uncomfortable, and she talks about uncomfortable things to bring solid concrete solution to problems that exist in and around us. And I feel like her books are brilliant to understand what goes inside the mind of a person who is not treated with love and tenderness, and how it breaks them and how it shapes them. This is the reason that why we have to talk about the uncomfortable things, why we have to bring up issues, why we have to fight for the people who are not being able to voice their own demands. The next section, the last section of today's video, is gonna be non-fiction books. Yes, when we are talking about feminism, when we are talking about women's rights, I believe that fiction is definitely a great start, but there are some books that we have to read to expand our understanding and get a hold of the perspectives and the narratives that we should be aware of. We should be part of the discourse and throw ourselves into the conversation and try to bring the little change that we can. The first book that I want to talk about is Men Who Hate Women by Laura Bates. I recently read it, and it talks about this extremism, the way women, like not essentially feminists, but all women are being hated upon, and there is so much of crime targeting women, and no one talks about it the way they should. It should be considered a very crucial matter, and it is not, and it is infuriating. And this book has triggered me, this book has infuriated me, this book has made me frustrated, and this book have made me realize that any platform, whatsoever platform we have to use it to talk about these things, because apparently the bigger platforms are not. And at the end of the day, we have to make a change, we have to make the world a better place, and at least a livable place for everyone who exists on it. The next book that I want to talk about is Her Stories, Indian Women Down the Age. This is a collection of small tales of the women in Indian history who have shaped India how it is today. The roles that are often forgotten, the credit which is due but never given, and these are the women whose stories need to be out there. So this is a list of 57 women, and I feel like they need recognition. And I have not read all the stories, but the ones that I have read, I feel like each and every child needs to know about this, the schools need to talk about it, and everyone around us should be aware of these phenomenal women of Indian history. And that's the book I think that I would be most excited about to recommend. And if you are to pick up one book from all the books that I have recommended today, make sure that it is this one. The next book that I want to talk about is Tits Up by Sarah Thornton, and this is a very interesting read because it is obviously about a body part, a female body part, that is breasts, and how its meaning and its objectivity and its narrative is being heavily shaped by men, and what is the story of sexualizing it and objectifying it and the different narratives that exist of this mere body part. And it is a very interesting study, it is so well researched, and I think that this type of books give you a very nuanced understanding of how society plays a pivotal role in everything all around us. The very minute little things that exist around us and the way we perceive them is heavily influenced by our society and by our circumstances and our surrounding, and this is a brilliant book to understand that. And last but not the least, I would like to recommend the book Bad Feminist. This book, I feel like, is a complete guide to understand this whole discourse. It is a very brilliant book that talks about feminism and the feminists and how they can be very different from one another, how their claims are different, how their ideologies are different, and it is absolutely okay. It is okay to understand it halfway, it is okay to understand it very little, but what is important is your interest to understand this very nuanced discourse and become the part of the conversation and look at things from different perspective and understand how it shapes us, how it shapes our society, and how being a feminist is essential. And why won't you be? That's basically the Bad Feminist. And I think this is where I end this video. I have recommended so many books today, and I don't know, I think this was a very haphazard video because I just randomly pulled out all the books that I have and all the books that I want to read and I have read and wanted to talk about. So yeah, please forgive me if I misspoke or was not able to give you a better understanding of the books that I was talking about, but I was really excited for this video and I hope and have my fingers crossed that you too will like it and enjoy it and probably share this with the people who might love to read a book or two for the Women's History Month. And if you end up reading any of these books that I recommended, if you have read them already, let's talk in the comment section. You can also reach out to me on my Instagram account. You can follow me there as well. I put up some fun content out there as well. So yeah, that will be wrap up. I hope that you read amazing books, you watch awesome movies, and always keep your heart at peace and give yourself the happiness that you deserve. Bye.